Welcome to Complicated Opportunities, a Cosmere RPG podcast with a couple of GMs. Last week, we started talking about some of the items and rewards you can have, and this week, we're actually going to break down the next few chapters of the handbook, talking about adventuring, combat, conversations, and endeavors. So these are a lot of the core mechanics of the game. So to get that started, we'll go ahead and start talking about adventuring. So Irving, do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So adventuring is 90% of what you're doing while you're playing the game. It is really just playing the game, role playing in either first or third person, kind of deciding what your character knows, acting on that, and just flowing through the story from scene to scene. And to start with a scene, that is any sort of moment in which the characters get to act and participate in the story, much like a movie. Except in this case, instead of actors following a script, it's you, the player, or the GM, giving a description and letting everyone else sort of improv off of you. And part of our role as GMs is to set the scene. So this could be anything from a simple description of the smoky tavern they walk into to a description of a battlefield, and asking your players how do they navigate trebuchet missiles landing or fused lightning hitting the ground near them and get to their objective.
Yeah, so the way this game in particular revolves around a few different types of scenes. So there's combats, conversations, and endeavors. Those are going to be kind of the main themes that you're going to see, and we're going to go over each one of those in depth. But for the adventuring chapter, there were a few things that we wanted to highlight. One thing Irving mentioned is first person versus third person roleplay, right? And just what that boils down to, like if you're in first person, you're acting as your character. So that might sound like where you are narrating it, like you have dropped into that character's head and are talking as them. Some people prefer third person roleplay where they describe like, hi, my character Knox is going to do this. This is what he thinks of the scene. You're narrating what Knox is thinking from outside of that character. So that's just a big thing. I found that I was a little more, I gravitated towards third person when I first started, and then eventually started dropping into first person more. But it
Yeah.
really is up to you. Some people do it one way, some do it the other.
Yeah, I think third person is much more new player or sort of nervous player friendly because you get to have a bit of that disconnect from the potentially like embarrassing moment of like acting as your character. It can be a little like you can feel very vulnerable doing a silly voice and being like, "Oh, I am Ivan, the Thalen spy, and I wish to go over here and stab this guy." And that can, like, I got a little nervous saying that on the mic, knowing that people might listen to this. Whereas third person, you could be like, all right, yeah, so Ivan's going to run over here, he's going to pick this lock, and when that guy notices him, he's going to stab him. It can be very matter of fact, very cut out.
Yep. And then one of the other things is a term you'll hear a lot is metagaming. That's something that has a very negative connotation to it in role playing, but you do have to start to navigate like what you know versus what your character knows. Because obviously, like if you're playing an adventure, for example, like one of the published ones right now, like Stonewalkers, a lot of people might have backed that campaign, got that book and have read through it, but now they're going to jump in and play it. Well, if you've read through it, you kind of know what's going to happen, right? So it can become a little difficult to make sure that you're acting as your character who doesn't know what's coming up next. That just makes it more fun for everybody. Don't get me wrong, when you've done that, sometimes it can be hard not to, well, I know where this scene's going or what this scene looks like it intends to do. So it's just something to be aware of. I wouldn't worry too much about it, to be honest. Like any GM's going to be able to pivot if they need to based on what players are doing, but it is something to just kind of be aware of.
A hot take, a little bit of metagame knowledge isn't bad.
Yeah.
Like you can keep the story moving how it should, or you can, if it's taking a while for people to solve a problem, and if you know the answer, you can come up with a way to find out the answer for your character. It just takes responsibility in having that metagame knowledge and knowing to not hog the spotlight and as a GM, if you find one of your characters kind of doing problematic metagaming, which that in itself is hard to define, but it's kind of one of those you know it when you see it deals.
For sure.
Like if it's disruptive or stealing anyone's time, pull that player aside and just have a conversation with them. Be like, hey man, like, so you've read this, right? Yeah. Well, some of these other people haven't. Let them experience it a little bit more. I know it can get frustrating when they don't want to do the right thing. You
Yep.
guys can, anyone can use that line of dialogue for free.
Absolutely. So just some quick hit things that are involved in adventuring that don't fall into one of those three scene types. Um, there are some cool rules and guidance in the book about things like events. There's something that can add to like the pace of a scene or the anticipation. Like we're talking about Roshar in this, so like a high storm's coming. So I've seen a couple examples where if you have three opportunities, you're able to avoid the high storm. Or if you have three complications, you're stuck out in the high storm. It takes you longer to get somewhere, and you take some damage because of that. Or you can have like a set. You're trying to defeat this group of troops before you know reinforcements that are coming are on the way. So they've just got some cool guidance around that and ways you can help set that scene to use those to move something along. Irving, do you want to talk about downtime? You've got a little more experience with downtime than I do running a longer campaign.
Yeah, actually, I want to pop in about events first here. There are few things more powerful at the table than setting down a d6 on a number and just, either with your own internal timer or with them doing something, changing that number. Absolutely every time I've done it, people go, "Wait, what's that?" Like, what do you mean the number's lower now? What does that mean? And it's very powerful. Do that. It'll get people interested. It drives some drama. And even if you're not playing it, or especially if you're not playing at a physical table, just like, on Foundry, you can pull up a nice event tracker. People know what that means there. But you can also, on another tabletop, just write a number on the screen for everyone to see. And they'll pause, ask what it is, and you'll say, well, something's coming. And just let that happen the way it will.
There's a fun way to do it using the plot die, where you basically set in your head, if am I getting to like three opportunities or three complications, and just after every round you roll a plot die, and depending on what it lands on, can help tick that timer down. Because then it's like it's also just giving them, they have no idea what you're rolling for, or what even the rules of what you're rolling for could be. So yeah, it's a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, and as long as you're internally consistent, that's important. Obviously, don't like just pull a rug out onto your players. But on to downtime. Downtime, most often, in my opinion, is either something that happens at the end of a session or in between sessions. Sometimes it can kind of happen between points of action. It is what your characters do while resting, and oftentimes you have different things you can work on. So you can either do a crafting project, you could do a profession to get a little cash for the side. Although this system, I personally don't feel like currency is that important. So that's a little bit more of like an RP thing, in my
For sure.
opinion. You can
Yeah, I
also
agree.
recuperate to try and heal your injuries because injuries in this system can last for a number of days or even potentially permanent. Uh, you can also research or train. Research, yeah, I mean, is what it says on the tin. You pick a topic or an idea for a topic, and then you make some rolls, and hopefully you learn something. Sometimes you can get info into new fabrials or spren or just knowledge of the world. Training is usually something you do to get like a specialist expertise. So Warhammer, Half Shard, or like Shard Blade, for example. Obviously, you have to have the ability to have someone to train you in it and have access to the things you're training with. You can't just, be out in the middle of the woods and say, hey, I got my Shard Blade expertise. And then self-reflection, which is, as we've mentioned in a previous episode, the game's built-in re-specialization tool where you can spend an amount of downtime and some currency to make mechanical changes to your character, such as switching talents or skill ranks.
Yep. The next thing that we can go into that we can just kind of highlight are conditions. There's a lot of the conditions you've seen if you've played a video game, played another TTRPG. Things like being knocked prone, immobilized, slowed down, stunned. Um, I will say all of these do have a little different rules. Not all, but like some of them are different. Like in a certain Seattle-based game, like when you're surprised, you like lose the ability to act in a certain round, whereas this one you lose your reactions, don't gain reactions at the start of the combat or on your turn. You can't take a fast turn and you get one fewer action during a slow turn, which we'll get into what that means here in the next like section we're going over. But so it just operates a little differently. One that I do like to, there's two that I really want to shout out because they're very like Stormlight specific. One of them is called Empowered, which we'd mentioned before. When you swear an ideal, you gain Empowered until the end of the scene, where every round you gain an advantage on all your tests. Your investiture refills to maximum, and but you do remove the condition at the end of the scene. So, like, it gives you that burst of power that the books represent when somebody swears an ideal. I thought that was a really good way to.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's you having your hero moment.
And then the other one is enhanced. So when you use your investiture, like some of your stats go up. So enhanced, an example of that would be like enhanced +2 for speed. So then you temporarily gain a +2 to any speed based talent, and your movement speed or movement rate increases as well. And that would apply for enhanced intellect, enhanced strength, whatever you are enhanced plus whatever, that's going to give you a plus in those rolls. The one thing that always
I
does
was
throw
going to
some
say,
people off. Go ahead.
important question to you, Kyle. Does
Sure.
it change your maximum health or your focus?
It does not, and it doesn't. It also does not change your defenses. So, like, if you're enhanced +2 for your strength, that doesn't mean your physical defense goes up by 2 as well. It's just for the rolls and the things that are directly associated with strength, speed, intellect, whatever attribute is being raised. So,
Now, I feel like it should change defenses. I know per the rules, it does not. I personally
yeah,
think it does. If I'm
yeah,
moving
that is.
faster, shouldn't I be harder to hit?
Yeah, I mean, and that is one of those things you could always feel free to homebrew at your table.
Yeah, obviously adjust the difficulty appropriately.
Yep.
Um, yeah, those are kind of the two, I'd say, Stormlight specific ones. You have other sort of system specific ones in Determined and Focused, I believe.
Yeah.
Is it not called? Yep, it is called Focused. Uh, but a good note when you're building your DM screen, in my opinion, having conditions on there in just some way that you can understand what they do with a brief look, one of the most important things you can do. Just having a table that, you know, has it as pared down as you need to fit all these on there. And I believe I don't have the Stormlight screen memorized. Are these on that default screen?
I don't remember because I haven't gotten mine yet, and the last time I used them was 4 or 5 months ago when we were at Gen Con. I believe it is, but I'm not 100%
They
certain.
might be on there. But if you're like me and you oftentimes use a custom GM screen, put them on there yourself. Uh,
I have
that's my
post-it notes.
advice.
I have post-it notes all over my GM screen, so that's definitely one I would recommend having if it is not on the Brotherwise specific GM screen.
Yeah.
Last couple things, injuries and rest. Um, I'm not going to go too far into these, but like when you reach a certain point, we have talked about how HP in this game doesn't necessarily mean directly health all the time. So like every time you're losing a little bit of HP, it's, stamina or your ability to focus, things like that. But when you do reach zero, or someone gets an opportunity on you with a weapon that has the deadly effect, you take an injury. And there are different roles you can do to determine how long is the injury and what does the injury do to you. And then there's always going to be like, how much time does it take to recover from an injury? And that's where downtime can come into account, things like that. And then the
I feel
final
like this is
thing. Okay.
important to ask. How do you calculate your injury roll?
So I'll be honest, I'm not the best with them.
Oh,
I have to
okay.
use the chart every time.
I was trying to prompt you into reading the chart.
Gotcha.
So when you make an injury roll, you roll a d20 and then you apply some modifiers. the deflect value of the armor you're wearing, which this is one I forget about all the time. I think we forget about it almost all the time.
Yep, me too, for
Uh,
sure.
so try to remember that, because one of the results is you die. So you don't
Yes.
want to die. You add any relevant ability modifiers from talents or abilities. I haven't seen any of those, but good that they have that language in there. And then you subtract 5 from the roll for each injury you already have. Negative numbers are possible. Granted, anything below -5 is you are dead permanently. So,
Yeah. Now,
but
I will. This is just a shout out because I've started using it a lot more. Foundry has that built into their roll table, so when you roll for an injury, it'll take into account like, do they already have an injury? What is their deflect? It remembers to calculate that for you, which is useful because I don't remember to do that.
that's
Um,
very nice. Good job,
yeah.
family team.
And then after you have figured out what kind of injury you have, you also roll a separate dice, I believe a D8. No, sorry, the D8 gives you the effects.
Yeah,
The D20 gives you the duration. That's what it is.
exactly.
Yep. So, and that's really about all I've got on injuries, unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, that was kind of the important thing, is like, hey, remember that your deflect affects your injuries, because
Yeah.
I forget that all the time. And I think important for people to know a little bit how that works. But back to sort of scenes, we everyone knows what combat is. Injuries happen in combat. We have two other types of scenes, Kyle. We have conversations and endeavors.
Yep. So conversations are literally what they sound like. They're a moment where the party is having a party, an individual, whatever, is having a conversation with an NPC that is kind of like an intense moment, right? And there are some pretty cool rules in here for it. So there are certain stats and certain talents that can affect how conversations work. Like you might have some talents or skills that help accomplish your goals in a conversation. They kind of have a very like flexible round structure, but ideally you want everyone to be able to contribute during the conversation. So you do treat it a little like it has rounds. Now,
Yeah.
certain people can contribute in different ways. Like I know we had talked about previously, if you've got a hunter, this isn't a hard and fast rule, but I like this rule that Irving came up with, where if you're playing someone who has seat Corey and they're like, hey, I want to spend this time. I know this guy's the kind of the leader of this group. I want to make sure I'm focusing on him for the next minute for my Corey. That might be their contribution to that scene. So they're not going to have a way to try to talk the person down or resolve the conversation. But there are some rules where the NPCs can use focus to help resist a very strong argument, or if you're starting to make like too much sense, they can spend focus to kind of overcome or resist those effects. But there are some cool talents that will actually help offset that. Like Baleful, someone has to spend double the focus they normally would to resist your effects.
Is it
Um,
double or one extra?
it might be one extra. I might have said double, but I believe it is one extra.
Yeah.
They even have like a cool little chart that gives you an idea is if somebody rolls an opportunity or a complication, how the NPC might react. The some of the different contributions, like you can influence someone. So like one of the groups that I've played with, someone got really good at like, hey, I'm going to spend a focus to give that guy advantage on this roll. So like if somebody's trying to make a really persuasive argument, I can help as long as the rules do shout out, like as long as you're close enough to like whisper to them like something that might help them or whatnot and really explain how you're going to aid in that conversation. But you can use one of your own focus to bolster somebody making an argument and give them advantage on their roll. Some of the skills that might make sense to use during a conversation would be like deduction, insight, perception, intimidation, leadership, deception, persuasion. Like those are the kind of roles and tests that you might want to throw in there. And a lot of times when you resolve those, if somebody succeeds on a roll, that's when an NPC can use a focus to resist that influence to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I feel like
However,
very rarely will you use a physical skill in a
yeah,
conversation.
I mean, you never know. You might just punch somebody, but then you better understand you're probably going into combat
Yeah,
after
I was
that.
about to say, I think the the end of your fist, the beginning of their nose is where combat starts.
Yeah. The book does shout out some different conversation types. So, like, if you're making an inquiry, so you're like talking to an NPC, trying to find out information, negotiations, schemes, socializations, and then the book actually has some example conversations in there as well. Yeah. Now we were mentioning rounds. Irving, do you want to go over how initiative works in this system when we're talking about combat?
Yeah, so hopping back to the combat chapter, I realized I took us on a little detour.
All
So
good.
chapter 11
Side
out of the
quests
way.
are good.
Chapter 10, man, we just did the main story quest in a different order, man. Now the story doesn't make sense. Uh,
It's
but
Skyrim. It's fine.
back to rounds. In a normal combat scene, players will be asked, are you taking a fast or a slow turn? Fast goes before slow, and players act before NPCs. So the turn order ends up being fast PC, fast NPC, slow PC, slow NPC. Oh, hey, and we have that written on our document. Wow, we're prepared. But so that's the order you can take things in. On your turn, you can do actions. You have a certain number of action points based on how fast you're going. So default, you have 2 actions for a fast turn, 3 actions for a slow turn, which is back to that condition. If you have 1 less action for a slow turn, you only have 2.
Yeah, and then some of the other things you can do during your combat, like at the beginning of every round, you gain a reaction that you can spend during that round of combat. There's a few different kinds of reactions. Some of them can be like an attack of opportunity or a reactive strike. I know they've been called both depending on what system you're in. So you can spend a focus to make a reactive strike if somebody's moving out of your melee range. There's things you can do like avoiding danger, dodging, aiding someone. So like, you step in if somebody's going to make a skill test. We've talked about it in conversations. You can also do this in combat where it's like you can spend a focus to give them advantage on whatever they're going to be trying to do. Whether that's attacking, using a skill, whatever.
And if I'm not
Um,
mistaken, almost all the reactions take focus, don't they?
yeah, almost all of them do. I know that, yeah, dodge does, reactive strike, avoid danger. Avoid danger might be the only one that I don't know that it calls out that it spends a focus, but it's also the one you're going to see the least because it's typically like you're dodging out of the way of something like a boulder rolling through.
Yeah, there's a boulder rolling down, or a bolt of lightning hit 2 feet away from you.
Yeah, you're trying to like avoid an area of attack effect,
Yeah.
something like that. One thing that I don't always remember because when we first started using Roll20, this wasn't an easy thing to do. Whenever you are in combat and you're making your roll to see if you hit, the system is designed to where you actually roll your attack test and your damage dice at the same time. And the reason for that is one of the things you can do in combat is what's called grazing. So if I make an attack and the target that I have to beat is 15 and I roll a 14, but I do a d8 of damage with my weapon. So I roll my dice, I roll a 13, but I roll an 8 on my damage. I can spend a focus to graze and I don't get to add my modifier, but I can still do the damage that my damage dice would have done. But like if I would have rolled a 1, I might not look at that as enough to justify using a focus to just do 1 damage. So that is a thing I do like to call out because I'll be honest, the first little while we were playing, I didn't remember to roll my damage dice at the same time for a
Well,
long time.
and I know the game kind of assumes you do. I don't think that matters. I think it's perfectly okay to say, yeah, I'm going to graze and then roll your damage. Sometimes it won't be as effective, but this isn't, we're not racing to optimize here.
Right.
It just do what works naturally for you. Cuz I don't like rolling other dice at the same time as my d20 if they're not added to that roll.
Gotcha. Yeah. And
So,
hey, that's the
yeah.
best part about game mastering is your table. You get to make the call.
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely fair. Yeah, it's just one of those things like, and obviously on Foundry it separates it for you. It's very nice. But in person, like if I'm rolling, how am I like, oh yeah, that D4 gets added to my D20 roll, not to my damage roll, which is a thing in this game. You can add a command die, for instance, to either one of those rolls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you need that to like make sure you're organizing your stuff, like totally fine. There's any
Yeah.
number of way you can do that. Yeah, just the rules call it out to do it that way, but your table, your rules.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an important note. You don't always have to 100% follow the rules. You should understand them before you decide to not follow them. But,
Yep.
you don't have to follow them 100%. The Brotherwise police are not going to show up and arrest you for not playing the Cosmere RPG correctly.
Yep. Absolutely. The number one rule of the Cosmere RPG is to still have fun. So play it the way it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll shout out about the combat chapter is for opportunities and complications, they do have a nice chart that lists out, like, I think it actually has like 10 different opportunities and complications you can use if you roll a 20 on your die or a 1 on your die, or if you're raising the stakes on the roll. So that is kind of a nice thing to have there.
Actually, 12 of them.
God, is it really 12?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great.
A couple of them are short, like reinforcements.
Yep.
But yeah, I think having those, and I think they're also on the cards that came with the Kickstarter that I assume you will be able to buy. I mean, it has a barcode. They have those suggestions of like the complication cards or the opportunity cards, which are so nice.
Yeah, I'm super jealous because I really want to get my hands on those, but mine has not shipped yet. So
Yeah,
it's
I
coming
know.
though. It is what it
God,
is.
we're on chapter 10, and I've had the book this entire time.
Don't have to rub it in. Don't have to rub it in.
I'm sorry, buddy.
All right.
Uh,
So
but
let's go.
chapter 12, Endeavors. So you're really excited about Endeavors. Why don't you tell me about
I
them a
know,
little?
right? It is funny because, like, I think these threw me off when I first started playing, but now I use them all the time.
Oh no, they're the
Um,
best. They're great.
like they were intimidating to me as a new GM. So if you're a new GM out there, because like that is definitely the experience I can bring to this. Like I was very intimidated by endeavors. Still, I'm a little intimidated by conversations. Not gonna lie, but endeavors are so flexible. Like that's I think why I like them so much. You can use them for literally anything. So like the way an endeavor works is there it's basically like a little bit of a montage to where your party is trying to do something that normally would take a long time to do, but this is a way to kind of speed it up and use the different skills your party has to try to reach a number of successes before a number of failures, which can be set up by the GM. Some of the games if you're playing some of the preset adventures, like they'll tell you like 6 successes before 3 failures. The book does have like 4 different types, and I'll kind of hit those here in a minute, but like some of them can have special rules, flexible rounds, but like just an easy thought of one is like you're trying to sneak into a um I'll actually use like Lift is trying to sneak into the palace to steal something because Lift be thiefed in. So you can start off with the party being like, okay, how do you want to approach this? And someone might be like, well, let me try to distract the guards. So I'm going to make a persuasion roll. And then based on whether they succeed or not, that can either go towards a success or a failure. And then it moves on based on the result. So you get to be flexible as a GM and potentially keep changing the scene as it goes along. But yeah, like there's so many different ways you can use it. It does have a cool little chart. I know not everybody likes charts. I like charts. That'll say like, if it's a simple one, do this many successes to this many failures. If it's a complicated one, this many to this many. If it's insurmountable, they've got to hit like a ridiculously high successes before a much lower amount of failures.
Yeah,
And the cool thing is like,
that's
whether you
good.
succeed or fail doesn't necessarily like the scene still continues. It's just whether you like if you succeed, you get like best possible outcome. So like if you're sneaking in, you successfully sneak in. But if you fail the endeavor, like you get captured. Now you're taken to the dungeon, and now you got to start from there.
Yeah, now you have a different kind of scene. Maybe it's a combat. Maybe it's a conversation.
Yep. So
Yeah.
some of the different types.
Well, before we get to that,
Sure.
just a little note. When setting the scene, bringing it back to the beginning, for your endeavor, something I've found is a very common sort of issue, not giving enough information. This is a game very often, in people's heads, yet they have to think. Giving more information to set that scene. So, like, you can say, hey, you guys have to infiltrate the palace. And for some players, that might be enough. But other times, you'll have to say, you know, you guys approach from the south. The second moon is hanging in the air. Guards walk around the parapet, and the front gate is shuttered. how do you want to try and get into the palace? You really need to give them that information to help get those creative juices flowing.
Yeah, and definitely like feel free to shout out what advantages there might be right now and what disadvantages there might be. Like you're coming in at night, so sneaking in might not be the end of the might be the most logical way to do it, but because it is nighttime, there's more guards too, so you're more likely to get caught while you're sneaking in as well. So like, but then also you can even set up like that there's the seaside pass where you could sneak in this way, or there's this. Like the more information your players have, the better. And it just really depends on the level of your group. Some people are going to be super creative with that, some people aren't. So as a GM, like definitely help guide them through the endeavor as you're talking through it.
Yeah, or at least, when the scene changes, reset the scene, be descriptive, try like think about how you would approach it and the information you would want.
Yep.
That's kind of my best guideline. And then, if your group says to you later, or just ask them after you run an endeavor, say, "Hey, do you feel like you had enough information to go on there?" Hopefully they'll tell you the truth and say like, "Yes, I thought that was good," or "No, I think I could have used a little bit more." Uh, but it never hurts to ask, and that can help you really get the most out of endeavors. Now,
For
onto
sure.
the types, Kyle.
Yeah, we've got discovery, which is your typical like investigation. So, as a GM, like you could always set up an investigative web, which is suggested where there's 10 to 12 different options they could take depending on what they find out. Where might it take them? Where so if you're doing a montage to figure out like we've arrived in a town and we're going to do a discovery endeavor, so we found this out, so it might take us over to the blacksmith shop where we need to find out what kind of weapon was used. Well, so we take it to the blacksmith, see what he has. He did a history roll. Didn't work so great. So we weren't able to find out much there. So now maybe we need to go here to find out what blacksmith might have made the weapon. Like anything you could do, there's like a web of intrigue to get through a discovery endeavor. So you want to have clues out there for the players, leads. The one rule that they have, like each one of these has like a special rule. I do kind of like the one for discovery where it's like you could also just bet on a hunch at the end of it. So like if you get to the end and you failed, but you did gain some clues along the way, right before you resolve the scene, you could let the players, hey, based on the information do you have, do you want to take a stab to figure out if you know what happened? And if they get it, awesome. Like that's okay. Let them succeed anyway because they were able to take 2 out of 7 clues and still figure it out. So I just think that's kind of a fun thing. But like if they also bet on a hunch and they're really like, yeah, this guy definitely did it, and then you go and confront him and you're wrong, now like they not only failed with that, but now they've also got a
Yeah, they've made
potential
an
enemy
enemy.
later. Yep.
Yeah. I
Love
think
that.
I think I would have a rule whenever I'm doing a investigation or a discovery. There's always a easy clue, a medium clue, and like a difficult clue to just in case. Because you should never should the players walk into a room and miss the one door out of there that leads them down the right way of the story. Always have, if it's crucial to move your story forward, don't have it be a roll. Like if it can, and I know this is a little weird for discoveries, I'm sorry, and I'm rambling,
No, you're
but
good.
don't don't let the story stall because someone failed a roll, or didn't get exactly high enough. You know, try to in your preparation think of sort of different brackets to have it in. So that easy clue, well, they can find the easy clue just by walking in, and that maybe gets them somewhere that is a longer journey or it's more difficult to find out the right information, but it's at least something. They can walk in and be like, "Oh my god, there's blood on the floor. That's really apparent." They might not notice, "Hey, one of the bread knives is missing from this bakery," or they might not notice, "Oh man, there like this picture is torn in his nightstand." Like there's different ways to set those clues that are different degrees of difficult. And I think that's really important. And this investigative web kind of lends itself to that idea because you can have your sort of 3 main clues and the path they lead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the more this is one of those things where like I don't always want to say you have to prep like crazy, because some GMs really do well with prepping, some don't. I'm kind of in middle ground. Like I prep probably a little more than I need to, but I'm also like don't want to over prep because I don't want to railroad my players into like there's only one way to do this encounter that we're doing. But yeah, like having a few good ideas written down, like take it where the players take it, but like if you've got a story that you need to tell too, like don't be afraid to just make that part of the endeavor, and then where they go from that can always give a little bit of flexibility too.
I think if you're going to do a discovery endeavor as sort of a main scene, you should put in the work
Yeah.
to bring it to life. Like, yes, it's extra prep, but it's just a different kind of prep, really. In my opinion, it's no more than picking your adversaries for an encounter. The
Hmm.
same way you look at the adversary section, you say, all right, I want some archers, I want some guys in the front line, and I want someone to be the boss. You think, okay, I have easy clue, medium clue, difficult clue.
Yep.
And it can be as simple as it's hidden in this specific spot, or they need to roll this difficulty to find it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the next type of endeavor is what's called an exploration endeavor. So then that's literally what it sounds like. You're in an area, you're trying to explore, you're wanting to uncover and see. Like you might be at a new area. Like we've just unlocked Urithiru, so we don't know where we haven't been able to check out half the city. So we've got our crew is going to go explore these unexplored areas of the city. So you definitely want to like determine the objective of what you're searching for, describe the setting, and then move through that exploration. The special rule here is about being against the odds. Some of that'll depend on what you're doing, where you're at, but it shouts out like some examples of, your spheres might be start becoming done. So now you're losing light. You aren't able to see everything. You might not know what's lurking in the shadows. If you're out in the wilderness, like dehydration, so it'll cause you guys to lose focus based on that. They do have different examples of like different skills that would be useful for that. But yeah, I mean, exploration's pretty straightforward, pretty much exactly what it sounds like. um,
Yeah, I think, and I kind of have this opinion on all of them, is that they have different uses in your
mhm.
story. So, like a discovery, that is for when you're on a specific plot thread. You're looking for insert item, thing, person. Uh, this sort of exploration endeavor, that's very much an opportunity for you as a GM to lay breadcrumbs, to sort of seed potential plot hooks and kind of offer up the bait to the players to take. So I kind of see exploration as that sort of starting endeavor that could lead to a discovery endeavor or lead to a mission or a pursuit.
Yep.
Yeah.
The next one is what's called mission endeavors. So, like one of the examples they give here is you're in one of Dalinar's highly trained strike teams, and you need to, like, you have a mission you're specifically being sent on. This is a great one to use the event tracker. Like, you have to infiltrate this city, but like there's an army on the doorsteps that's trying to get through. You have a certain amount of time to be able to reach your objective before time runs out. This is a good one to like really push that sense of urgency in the endeavor, to really like cause a kind of high intense scene where you're trying to accomplish a mission quickly. But yeah, I mean that
I feel
one's
like a mission endeavor to me is a heist.
yeah, a
And
heist is
most
a great
often,
example of it for
like,
sure.
hey, it's the French Connection. We got to get in there, steal the thing, get out. Uh,
Yeah, or even like depending on what kind of players you're playing, like this is an assassination mission where it's like you're gonna have a
ooh,
specific spot to get a specific thing done, and it is only gonna be able to happen in this certain window.
that is a dark and cool idea, and I am stealing that.
That
I am
was just
100%.
immediately, yeah,
Oh man, that's gonna be cool.
or it even like, and if you don't want it to be as dark, like you can definitely say like, hey, there's this, like we're getting ready to face a group of singers, but there is this fused back here where if we can infiltrate our way in and take out the fused first, it'll make the army's battle a lot easier. So still a pretty much same thing, but not as much of a negative connotation, I guess. But yeah, that is 100%. Like that was the first thing that came to my mind for some reason. I think it was because they said strike team. So,
Yeah, I guess maybe. Yeah, yeah.
um,
Oh, that's cool. I'm definitely gonna do an assassination that is a endeavor slash event like that
and if
next
you
time I
fail,
think of something to run.
and if you fail, Now you got to fight your way out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It just makes it a more difficult combat. Or like if you're me playing the original Assassin's Creed, you get the guy, but then all his guards notice because you have
Yeah,
to
that is
stand there and talk to him while he's dying.
that is every assassination I did in Assassin's Creed for like 3 games.
Yeah. Then you have to run.
Yep. And speaking of running, the final endeavor type is a pursuit.
Pursuits.
So you might even go from one endeavor type to another. Pursuits, I have found a lot of fun the 2 or 3 times that I've used them or played in them. So this one, kind of like the special rule is like you're closing the distance. So like you start the endeavor. I think Irving, you've used like a number system, which I think is really helpful, where it's like, hey, he is 4 spaces ahead of you, and if he gets to 7, he escapes. Every time you succeed, you gain ground. If he fails, he moves back. So like it's constantly a push and pull of trying to capture somebody. So I mean, since we're sticking with some Stormlight examples, like when Lift is trying to get the ruby from the fused, like to get to Dalinar, like that is a pursuit endeavor if I've ever seen one.
Really? You
So
think that's a pursuit and not a mission?
I would do that as a pursuit endeavor myself
Mm.
because and the reason I would do it that way, like just a little
Is because
inside
they
base.
were kind of racing, yeah.
Yes, because like he had a place he was trying to get the ruby to Odium or whoever it
Huh.
was. I don't even remember.
That was not the lift example I thought you were going to go with to start. I thought you were going to do her running from Nail.
Oh yeah, that one works too. So like she's just trying to get out of the castle or the palace, and Nail's gaining ground on her. Like you could do that as a pursuit. But yeah, the other one I was thinking was definitely Lift, like weaving through the Battle of Thalen Field, trying to catch that route.
Mhm.
It might have started as a mission, and then once like dude, I just thought of something. I'm gonna go with it. So like it starts off as a mission endeavor for her to figure out who's got the ruby, but then once he notices that she's on his trail, now it becomes a pursuit endeavor. Like you could even switch what type of endeavor it is in the middle of it. Dude, this is why I love endeavors. There's so much stuff you can do with
Oh,
these.
endeavors are great. They are very moddable, moldable, and just a good way to tell a story that's not combat.
Yep.
And obviously, they can very much quickly become a combat, but they don't have to start that way. And I think that's very fun.
Hmm.
You can even use it to influence combat and give you like your players positive or negative modifiers based on the result.
Yep. But that really is about it on the endeavors as far as the examples they've given. But like we've even talked about just from spitballing these, like different ways they can be used. Um, yeah, there's a lot you can do with endeavors. But
Yeah, there's a
that's
lot
really
you
all
can
I've
do
got.
with really all of these types of scenes. Uh, and I think they all have their uses. It's a very strong part of this game that they separate them out into specific scenes. I don't know too many games that have specific conversation scenes, and even like I know you've said that you think the rules are a little light for conversations, but having focus and the nature of spending focus to resist influence, I think that's more than most games do.
Yeah, the one thing that I think this is where, like, as we talked about with the Night Radiant quiz, my Skybreaker can kick in a little too much, is like, you also don't have to completely drain focus. Like, if your party makes a super compelling argument, you can end the conversation there. And you don't necessarily have to use all of your focus to like finish a conversation. They're very flexible, and I think that's just where I struggle as a new GM is like I need a little more guidance sometimes. But like it is, at least it is giving you something to go off of to set that scene versus just role playing it completely.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah.
and I think always there's opportunity to just have this kind of blanket advice of reward player ingenuity, but don't give them anything for free.
Yep.
Like if they come up with a good argument, they still have to roll well, and if they don't, like they just failed in their presenting of the argument is the kind of the idea there. Uh, in
Yeah.
this game doesn't have a meta currency to award. A lot of games do. So there's no like, oh man, your RP was so great. Here's a special token for you to cash in later. But
Right.
it doesn't need that. We have a lot of other ways to get fun narrative consequences. You can always also add a plot die to any of these things.
For sure. And the best
Yeah.
thing is the book will even give you some guidance on those, which I always appreciate. Awesome. Well,
But that's been us, folks. And remember, this episode is sponsored by Arcadia Brewing Company. No, it's not. Please, if you're going to drink, be of age, drink responsibly. And don't try to get sponsored by a brewery that's been under for 5 years. I think it's 5 years. Might be more. Anyway, that's us.
Yep. So next time we are finally going to break into, we've given you all of the overview of the rules, how to create your characters, what kind of characters you can play, what kind of scenes you'll see. Now we're finally getting into the meat of this podcast in general. Next week, we are going to talk about the chapter on game mastering. This very well could turn into, like, really, this is going to turn into the rest of the podcast, like, forever. So we'll go through like how the book kind of guides you through a lot of things, but then this is where, as the audience, we would love to hear what you want to know about GMing this game. And just to give you a little preview, I don't have any hard dates on this, but we are going to start having some guests on. We are going to bring on some of the GMs from the Shard of Opportunity to just talk about how they've adjusted, like how they've GM'd in the past, how they've adjusted to this system, what they've learned. So yeah, we are finally going to be breaking into a very GM heavy podcast. So please get your questions out there so we can answer them for you. But until then, let's go ahead and roll our plot die and raise the stakes. This has been Complicated Opportunities.